Esports is often equated to headshots, APM numbers, combos and team fights. While the mechanics of what we play usually is the main focus, every game carries an element of strategy. Every competitive game has an element of both, but rarely do we see games in the spotlight heavily favoring strategy over mechanics. Because of this, strategy games are often underrated or underrepresented when we think about esports. That's why in this episode we're taking a look at one of the more unlikely games to have cultivated a competitive scene. Made by the indie game company Chucklefish, it's Wargroove. Wargroove is a turn-based strategy game, which features a fully fledged single-player campaign with crossplay on consoles and PC, and customizations and modding options to allow the community to build their own experiences. Within this community, we have found Barrett, who is a streamer and caster in the game for the competitive organization, aptly called Groove of War. He will tell us more about the game, its community, and what makes it different from other competitive games. This is Nichesports' Wargroove. Hello and welcome to Nichesports, the podcast which focuses on niche esports gaming communities and competitive games that you might have not heard of. I'm your host, Defur, and with me I have my co-host, Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hey, what's up?
Today we're going to focus on Wargroove, which is a bit different than the games that we have focused on previously. I noticed when I looked back at the episodes and like, man, we're only talking about shooters, which is a bit unfortunate. So I wanted to get something different, and Wargroove is something that I've been looking at least for some year now, because I've been following a certain someone, which is our guest today, and it's Barrett. Hello, Barrett.
Hello. How are you doing today, Defer?
I am very tired, as we previously noted, but I'm very excited to actually have this. It took a bit of time to get this episode going, but I'm glad we're here. Barrett, of course, is someone that I met a few years ago when I was in Scotland. We were at the Big Fest, I think it was called, or like.
Yeah, I've got some of the things in my background. I actually have.
Oh yeah. So you can't obviously see it in the audio version here, but he has some posters in the background. But yeah, so we met there, and you helped out during that event, which I did too. And I followed you on Twitter since, and have been seeing kind of how you've been getting involved into Wargroove. I mean, I guess it's easier for you to maybe introduce yourself and what you do in regards to that game. And yeah.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Barrett, otherwise known as Barrett RTS. I am the main, tournament admin, I guess you would say, for Wargroove. So I am involved with a group called Groove of War, which has now been kind of rolled into, the official Wargroove community. Chucklefish have asked us to be on their server. We have our own space there now. So I do a lot of tournament admin for that. I do a lot of event planning. I'm very much an ideas guy as well, but I'm that ideas guy that then goes and make things happen, which is a fairly important part of being a good ideas guy, is actually doing the thing.
Yes.
I also am the main streamer and commentator for the game, so we didn't really have a super active commentator before I took part. There was one person who then unfortunately, the first ever tournament for Wargroove had a really bad finals, really bad. I think it might actually be the worst finals in esports, period.
I'm really curious to hear more about that later. If you have to tell us more about that, but that's okay, cool.
But the person who was streaming before and who did that stopped basically, and then there was kind of room. They basically said who is available to, stream this game. And I was like, well, I've done the esports stuff before. I've done really bad commentary at events that I have TO'd for various games. So sure, I'll step in. I stream Wargroove on a regular basis, and that's kind of how I got my start there. So
cool.
Yeah,
and
I do.
I was just gonna note that it's funny to hear, because we had previously casters on this show as well, and all of them note that I'm such a bad caster. Even I say that too, about my own casting. It's just the humble thing where it's just, I think from the outside looking in, when I've been looking at the streams, you seem super knowledgeable about the game, and obviously Wargroove being a strategy game, which I haven't noted until now, is very important to kind of understand how the mechanics of the game work. So with that in mind, I kind of wanted also to ask you to maybe, in your words, to someone who's not familiar with the game, maybe describe it a bit. Usually I do this part, but I streamed the game a bit, and I didn't. I was a very beginner, I could say lightly. So I thought it was maybe a better idea for you to perhaps describe the game a bit.
Sure. So, I mean, very, very simple. Like, if anybody's ever played Advance Wars, then it's like a big spiritual successor to that game. There wasn't a new Advance Wars game for like at least 15 years or something by the time Wargroove came out. So the people at Chucklefish were like, we want to make our own take on this, because nobody, well, I say nobody else, there's been like a bunch of attempts at making that style of game. But anybody who's listening who's familiar with Advance Wars will like get Wargroove basically. But for anybody else, it's a turn-based strategy game. It uses like a grid, so it's lots of little squares. And I guess mechanics-wise, like you have, you build up armies, like you move them around. It's like one side goes and then the other side goes, so you're moving like your entire army in one turn. And like there's a bunch of different production on the map, and you build stuff each turn, and there's a bunch of like villages across the map, and those generate your income. So like you're trying to balance like winning on economy versus like winning in terms of like fighting your opponent's army, and also like managing macros. So like if you've ever played any kind of like RTS like StarCraft or something, then a lot of the ideas do translate across. Of course, you know, there's the difference of we've asked like StarCraft people to do like show matches before, and one of the like the funny things is like they're like, oh, I can't rely on like my mechanics here. I can't APM like against my opponent. Like it's all about I say all about, it's almost all about just like thinking in the mind game.
Decision making, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of the things that I kind of went through my head when I tried out the game was that it felt almost like a mix of, like sometimes you would describe StarCraft as like some evolution of chess, in like some people say, because of how you kind of dig into each other's minds. And also to notice this is a 1v1 game, but you can also play it in a story mode as well, and what I was doing to try and learn the game. But it really feels like this game somehow is somewhere between chess and StarCraft, like if there was ever like a gauge, because I really felt that like you know, as many people have done, like played chess in your life, you have these like, you sit there and think and ponder about your next move, but then you also have this kind of element of building up an army, which obviously does not exist in the same way in chess, which I found really interesting.
If I look at like the demographics of where people in our community come from, chess is actually like a big source of like people's like game before they play Wargroove. Like it generally is like,
oh, that's cool.
So like the big demographics are like Advance Wars is the huge one, obviously, because like we're like, it's the spiritual successor to that game. So obviously like a lot of Advance Wars players were like, oh, you know, I want to try this out. And then it's like chess. So the first ever Groove of War champion is I believe a chess grandmaster from Ireland.
That's crazy.
Who, to my understanding, hates chess now. That's why he moved on.
Aww.
You converted him.
Well, it's funny. I heard the reasoning, and I'm not entirely sure if it's true. But chess has an issue of like it's very solved to a certain degree, and he actually really doesn't like that about games. And there's like a bunch of stuff, like he's notorious for never practicing Wargroove. Like he just goes in and like tries to win off of like just thinking it through and stuff, which, you know, that's a whole other story. But
It sounds
yes.
it sounds like one of the melee gods, where I think I was thinking of Mango, who is just like drinking and then goes to a tournament and like beats people up. Maybe not the same style, but it's just interesting to see that there's like personalities that kind of flow into that play style. And we're gonna look more into that too. But you mentioned a bit how people got into the game. Were you then one of the Advanced Wars like fans that kind of got your eyes set on Wargroove from there?
Yeah, so my story is a bit interesting because I've always wanted to do game dev, and one of the cool things Wargroove does is it has a very in-depth like campaign editor and like map editor and all that. So my idea with Wargroove was there's a game I want to make, and I'll maybe like a decade down the line I'll actually get around to making it. But I wanted to make that, so I was like, cool, I could like build out the kind of like story of that in Wargroove and like use that as a kind of like way to like build up, like flesh out the story of the game I want to make, and like have that be in like the campaign editor for that. What ended up happening, and what always seems to happen with me, is that I was streaming it because like, you know, I had fun, and I started streaming 1v1, and then they were like, hey, we have a finals for Groove of War 2 coming up, and I wasn't involved really at all. I didn't even enter that tournament. Can anyone stream it? And I said, sure. So I ended up streaming the finals, and that's kind of how I got into it. And then from there, the person who was running Groove of War quit. So they were like, does anyone want to run events for this game? I was like, well, you know, I've been a TO for, it's like 8 years at that point. Like, depending on like what you qualify as TOing. But I've been like trying to run events for that long, and I've been a Smash TO from like the year after the documentary came out, which is like 2015, I think, something like that.
Oh yeah.
So I had a lot of running events experience, and I was like, sure, I guess I could like help out. And then, you know, a few months later, I'm like the main Wargroove TO.
But okay,
right on.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I love these stories where it's just like spontaneously kind of happens. Like you somehow it leads to another thing, and then it just grows from there. Just as a reference, Groove of War is the competitive side of the Wargroove community, right?
Yeah, we are like technically like an actual organization. I don't think we're like formalized in terms of like we don't have like a constitution, or like we're not registered as like a non-profit or anything. That is something we probably should get around to doing at some point, but
you have a fairly organized Discord, maybe. That's
there's a staff Discord, and you know, we're involved with like the Wargroove people, so like Chucklefish, we've worked with them in the past, like a lot of
yeah, and I actually wanted to get to that because so my initial like trying to kind of research this game and this community was that I found out about the Groove of War community, and then I was like, oh, I'll look into the Discord. And then as I joined the Discord, it was like, oh, this Discord is no longer like active. Please go to the official Wargroove Discord. And that was like, that kind of was one of the things that piqued my interest, because I'm so used to, you know, and you also doing stuff with Smash, you can understand the feeling of like no way having a relationship with like the developers when you do stuff for their game. And it just kind of blew my mind. It's like, what did they like take over the competitive community, or like could you just kind of run us through that? Like so are you working with the devs now, or how does that work?
So we've been working with them for a while. When they did like a big 2.0 update that had like some free DLC, and like there was a new campaign they added, and like one of the things they did was they approached us and said, hey, we want to update like the quick play map pool for our game. Because like, even actually, funnily enough, it's like the maps we gave them didn't hold up very well, but we were like, okay, like we can design some better maps for you, because the maps that were in the base game were, I mean, they were okay if you're like a casual player, but they had lots of problems. Like they would stalemate easily, or player 1 or player 2 would have a big advantage, and we do a lot of stuff to like when we make maps to make sure that doesn't happen and try like keep it as balanced as possible. But the initial base game maps had a lot of issues like that, and then we worked and had our own maps in. So one of my maps is in. Unfortunately, also that's one of the maps that didn't hold up very well because we were building for a meta that we didn't know, because it was also a big balance patch. So and it's Wargroove actually is very easy to like make something for like a map and have it break quite easily. It's actually really like a long and kind of not really tedious process, but it takes a lot of time to make something that's actually good and holds up. We've done a bunch of work with the devs in that kind of regard, and we also do like a lot of promotion stuff. So nowadays we are admins on like the main Discord, so we can do all like admin stuff. So we can like kick and ban people. We can tell people to like behave. And like we have they basically said, we want you to promote your events and like tag everyone on Discord when you do it, which we were a bit hesitant about first, because there's always that thing of like there is the casual and the competitive split to some degree, and we didn't want to make like the main Discord feel like just a competitive community. We wanted like casual people to
That's interesting. Like that kind of threw me off, because I for me, when I've interacted with a lot of competitive communities, they want to like take over. Like, this is now this is the esports game. Like, you're not enjoying this casually for the story. No way, man. But yeah, it also makes me think of like gets me back to the times of hearing about balancing of StarCraft maps, both in one like Brood War and like in StarCraft 2, because there was a lot of these kind of figuring out the game based on designing maps, which is really fun. Like you try to kind of, maybe in StarCraft 2 there was a long time where it was this focus on like a not a narrow ramp, but then it's like, oh, because this unit, the sentry, like it can block off the ramp. But then when they started changing the mechanics, like this ramp just like it doesn't work anymore, and then you have to change the entire map and stuff like that too. I can only imagine how that must have been in a game like this, where like in turn-based games, every decision matters so much more than like the micro decisions in StarCraft, where you can just like spam around and hopefully something works. But in this, it's like, if you change something in the map, maybe it's gonna completely break it. Do you have like any, I guess, examples of how that would work, or like how because we haven't really got into the mechanics that much yet, but I'm just kind of wondering how that would take shape in like.
So I guess like one of the big things there is like, if you're in an RTS, like you can kind of maneuver your army like very freely. So map design, like obviously it matters a lot, but like depending on the game, like StarCraft 2, like you could make a pretty bad map, but it would still play out like okay-ish, because like people are able to like maneuver stuff in real time, and you can still flank your opponent, you can still drop stuff in their base, now disworm, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of mechanics to like allow for the game to still function okay, even if a map is bad. In Wargroove, if a map is too choky, the map, like, neither player can attack. It's actually a bad idea to attack if like the map has like if it's too choked up and you can't like push into your opponent. And that is the Groove of War 1 finals, which was a 6-hour draw.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, like,
could you describe the map? Because I was actually watching a video earlier, and it looked like only a bridge connected the two players. Like, there were moats on the top and the bottom, and like on the bottom there was like an area that was walled off, but it took like 4 to 5 turns to break the gate. But yeah, it looked like the only way you could like go towards your opponent was to like cross a bridge.
I don't remember that map in particular, but the finals one, it had like a big kind of S in it in the middle, because the map was called Skirmish, although everybody refers to it as Stalemate now. And yeah, like it had like a very narrow choke point to attack. There was water, so you could go around the edges, but nobody ever like. I don't think there was any naval on that map, so like you couldn't really use it for anything. There's like a tower to build air units, like super far, like in the corner. which nobody really gets because you have to sacrifice, you have to like move a unit back. So I guess if the map stalemate's really hard, you can send something to go capture that, but by that point there's like 30 or 40 units on each side and nobody can attack.
That's rough. Like it's hard not to do the comparisons with StarCraft when you hear these stories, because there's also been those moments when, like, nowadays it feels like esports has gotten to the point where they're in the optimization phase, where finals, like the designs of games have gone in that path where like they limit how long they can take. Like you had the Dotas where it's like one map could be like 2 hours when it's like dragged out, and then you have Counter-Strike with overtime where it can go 3 hours for one map. Then you have these like newer games coming out like League of Legends, it's like a bit smaller. Valorant, like it's a bit smaller, like and then you get to that point, and so it feels almost like flash to the past with like I remember seeing some StarCraft tournament and you're like, oh, I'm wondering who's gonna win, and then you're like half asleep 3 hours later because they're not doing it.
Yeah, I think StarCraft is really appropriate too because of the whole strategy component of it, right? And do you remember that one GSL finals defer where it was like, I don't know if it was TVT, I don't know if it was Boxer versus MMA, but like that game, like StarCraft games normally in the pro level go 20 to 30 minutes, right? Maybe 40 is like overtime. I swear that game went to like an hour. Yeah. And like no one wanted to be there anymore, you know? Yeah.
It's like the crowd goes out and it's just sad.
Yeah.
So, but in this case, then it's interesting that I guess the developers kind of took help from the community then to be able to improve on these situations, because as from what you said, it sounded like this was like a big event for the community where it's like the streamer just like pieced out after that final. No one wanted to like associate with this anymore. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's figure out how how we can solve this. And
yeah,
I guess
sorry, just to go on that, that's still the most popular, like, viewership-wise finals we've ever had.
No.
Like, the YouTube video has, like, thousands of views when, like, we get, like, maybe hundreds on, like, the other finals. You know, like, viewership-wise was in the thousands, like, live viewership. Because, you know, it's, like, the new game. Like, people were excited about Wargroove.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we get, like, under 100 for finals these days. So...
Yeah. That's rough. But...
Yeah.
But I was going to say, because I wanted to get into more of like describing the game more specifically for people who might not be aware of it. First of all, I just want to say that the game is super cute and wholesome. Like, it's so refreshing to play something that you know, it's not only a competitive game, and that's what I've been playing most of these days, but it's like it has a story mode, like a single player campaign, but it's also this like fantasy kind of world in like a pixelated art style. So if anyone hasn't like checked it out, I'd really recommend to just watch a trailer of it, because it's so, I don't know, to me it's like, oh yes, okay, now I can just enjoy this. But besides that, I think it's also worth mentioning, because this kind of blew me away as well, is that like so it's on a lot of platforms, and you can pretty much mod the game, as you previously mentioned too, that you can make your own campaigns, you can make your own cutscenes, like you can do pretty much anything in the game. But it is a game made by a smaller company, if I understood it correctly. So Chucklefish is not like that big, right?
Yeah, I think Chucklefish is like, or when they made Wargroove, it was like 15 people, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like it's at that level where it's like, I mean, I'm super impressed as both as a like gamer and
same here.
Like also game designer, but as to just that they have put so much effort into making it something that can be like something that can be alive for a long time, and that the community can modify it in the way that they do. It seems that they have a lot of trust for the community as well, because it's not an easy step for a developer to be like, hey, just ping at everyone in our official Discord server. Like, I work at a game company now, and that makes me a bit nervous, like hearing someone say that, because you can't know what people do, but it's really nice to hear that a relationship has gotten good enough to that point that you can have that trust in each other.
Yeah, I think when you're small, it's like it's totally more acceptable to do that, right? Because then I think communities that gravitate around like smaller developers, they just tend to be nicer in general, right? Like everyone knows that like you want to grow the community, you want to keep it wholesome, you want to keep the quality high, right? And honestly, like the amount of effort that the devs have put in, the fact that they made the game so full-featured and cross-platform, and I agree, it's like extremely aesthetically pleasing. Like I was watching videos of the game, and I thought, oh, like I would really like, just from the visuals alone, I want to try it out, you know? So I definitely feel like that was like a factor in why, like, yeah, let's just like roll in like people who are willing to volunteer their time to help us grow this game, you know?
And then it almost felt like an happy accident that it also turned out to be a competitive game, because when you launched the game at first, I'm like, oh, this looks like definitely like, I get the same kind of cozy feeling as when I play like Final Fantasy or something like that, like the older ones with the fantasy kind of themes, and then it's like, okay, but competing in this, like, oh, that's a, you know, I'm when I'm thinking of competition in games, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna shoot someone's head, or like it's gonna be like gory mess in like lasers in StarCraft, but no, this is just like, I mean, you can even have like a small, like a cute dog. It's so cute. Anyways, we're gonna get more into the actual mechanics.
The dogs don't die either; they run away.
Oh yeah, yes, exactly.
So even like the small details like that, it is very, like, it isn't.
Yeah,
like a
I noticed that, like
violent.
when the units fight each other, like they retreat, or like they're just like, oh no, and it's not like they're dying to like into bloody messes or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think in the first like tutorial mission that you play as this vampire lady, when she hits people, they like fall over, but it's not like, you know, she's like impaling or like eating them up or something like gory as that, which I actually like enjoyed that they.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that too.
Yeah. The game isn't on mobile though, right?
No, it's on PC, so Steam and Windows Store, Xbox, PS4 and Switch, and has crossplay between all four of them. So
that's
still
crazy.
A lot.
Yeah, and
it's insane.
Like cross-platform of all those consoles too. When it's like, it wasn't that long ago where it's like, oh, can you really have cross-play between PlayStation and Xbox? Like, no, they hate each other, man. Like, you can't do that. Like,
it is actually possible.
Yeah, the technology is there. But looking at the game more specifically, so we mentioned this previously, but mainly this is a 1v1 game, like how you compete in it then, and I guess looking at how you set up a match and stuff like that, it's just you load into one of the levels, but you have like you said that there was a map pool. Is there like a banning phase where you like kind of pick a map first, and how does that work?
There is. So for tournament play, because it's very different to like just casually playing. So casual playing, you can do whatever. You can pick any commander, like you can pick any map. Tournament play will have a map pool for each event. Normally that's 6 maps. Depending on what the event is, and then people can ban and pick from those. I'm trying to remember. We change it each event a little bit, just because we're trying to like tune it to the right thing. Like find out what is like the best system. I think what we have right now is that someone like we do a coin flip, and someone bans 2 maps out of the 6, and then the other person picks from the remaining. So like if someone has like 2 maps that they really don't like, or like think have balance problems, because that's sometimes an issue, then they'll do that, and then like the person chooses from the remaining, and like if you lose the map, like then you ban 2 and your opponent picks. So there's like a process, and we have a set thing, and like all the maps are on the server, so like you can just go and like plug in the download code or search by name. And here's the thing: people don't seem to know that this is a feature in the game, but there is an option in like when you go and search for maps that has like name, and you can put the actual like you can put a word from the name of the map, and it'll give you a list of all the maps. And I'm tired of people asking for codes when they could just go type the name of the map in. It's very
shout outs to the community that needs to know this.
Yeah, but I mean, it's fine. That's just like a pet peeve of mine. But
yeah, but also for besides the maps, we haven't really gotten into that as much. We mentioned it like a little, but you do have commanders in this game, which is basically like the hero unit, but it also kind of decides the visuals only of the characters, right? There's not like different like races like there are in StarCraft with like Zerg and Terran. Like you have the same base units, but they look different, but depending on your commander. But the commander has different abilities, right? Is that how if I understand correctly?
So all commanders have the same like base stats. So they're a unit that runs around the map and kills stuff and takes damage.
It's like Warcraft 3 kind of feeling.
Yeah, very similar to that. But the one difference, of course, is that if your commander dies, you just lose.
Oh yeah.
So we did a show match once with a StarCraft streamer called Nero, and he did not know this. So he like walked his commander forward, and it died, and he like lost the game, and he was like, "Oh." And then he played another game because that match ended very, very quickly. So he did like another game after that, and it was very fun. But yeah, that is like one of the key differences is that there are two victory conditions in Wargroove, or two like actual ones. Is if your stronghold dies, which is like your main base, or if your commander dies. So we definitely see a lot of people. Commander deaths are normally a bit more I'm trying to think of the right words. Not epic, but like they're very they can just come out of nowhere, right? And it can be very dramatic. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Stronghold deaths, you normally see them coming.
I see, and as opposed to the stronghold ones, it's like a slow like climb where they eventually die,
Slow
right?
death.
Or something. Yeah.
Yeah, or I mean sometimes you get like a really sneaky play where like two dragons fly around from like the side.
Oh, a
and
base
take one out.
trade? Shit. You can really like, oh my god, it's the more I hear about this, I'm like, yeah, this is another StarCraft. Like I'm really in on this. But
This is the future of StarCraft.
Yeah. But yeah, so could you maybe just like describe a few of the commanders, because it's like they are basically the characters from the story, but how did they differ? You said that they had the same base stats, but
yeah, so they're the same stats like combat wise. So they have the same amount of health, same amount of damage. They take the same amount of damage from other units as well. The difference is that every commander has a thing called a groove, and that's like it's like a super meter in a fighting game. Like you kind of walk up, or I guess like in Overwatch or whatever now, because every game seems to have a super meter.
yeah.
But that builds up by like you fighting with your commander. It builds up over time as well. There's a commander called Volder, and every time he kills a unit, he gets full groove, which is like really, really strong, and he's like very snowbally. So they can do all sorts of stuff. So in Volder's case, you can spawn a sword, which is like the most basic unit in the game, but you can get a lot of swords. So I remember there was a conversation happening early on, and it was like Advanced Wars players who played the beta for Wargroove, and they were like, oh, like he's only building like a very basic unit out of this. Like that doesn't seem that strong. And then someone else was like, I don't know, that's a lot of swords. Like you can do a lot of work with that. But there's other commanders, like you mentioned Sigrid. Her ability is she just eats a unit and gets full health, or gets the health back that unit had. So, if it was
It's an allied unit or an enemy unit?
Enemy unit. So,
okay.
There has been talk
it's not
about
like devouring. Yeah,
it would be good if she could kill allied units. Actually, there are circumstances where that would help her, but.
In that case, it would be exactly like the Zerg. Like I don't remember what the ability was called, but you could like leech off your own buildings to kind of build you up. But also, just to kind of, I guess, to visually describe this, the guy who is making swords, he's like almost like a necromancer, and the sword units are like the skeletons, right? So it's not just like he's spawning them in. It actually is like a visual component. Whoops. Smacked my microphone. There's the visual component that kind of matches it as well, where it's like the vampire kind of leeches off other units to heal herself, which I really dig that too. It's not just like, because I think if you haven't seen the game and you hear this, it's like it's not like chess pieces that are just like exchanging and then they get more buffs and stuff like that. They actually have, I guess, personality to them too, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Volder like literally yells "Rise from your grave" when you like resurrect. Like, so he's like actually resurrecting stuff. I mean, mechanics wise, you can do it anywhere. Like it's not like, oh, you have to like kill a unit and then there's a corpse on the ground and you res stuff from it. Like that's like Warcraft 3 or something.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's like very simple. You just like I don't know, apparently there's just dead bodies everywhere. But
But also to mention then, because I found this interesting, is that besides, I'm not sure how many commanders there are, but there was quite a few actually. Like it almost felt like a fighting game roster when you kind of see them all. Is it like maybe 16 or something like that? Or maybe I'm overshooting now. But maybe
something like that. I think it's like close to 20. It might be.
Yeah, somewhere around there. But and this thing I kind of learned too from streaming it is that some of the commanders are actually banned in competitive play. Could you like tell us why that is, and like how did that come to be?
Okay, so I mean there was we'll talk about Ryota because he's kind of just a very funny example of what happens.
I can feel the pain, like when
there's
you're
like there's a monkey's paw curse here, right? Where the community loved Ryota, like really did, like in the original like 1.3 was the version that we played for like the longest, like out of all the 1 versions. So we had Ryota, and he was like really fun. He's really flashy. His ability is that he like jumps across like enemy or any unit actually and damages enemy units. So you could see like Ryota zip around the entire map and like hit tons of units, and normally he'd like end up in a position where he'd just die immediately, but it was like cool, like because you know it's the big flashy play. Like people loved Ryota, and like it has like a really cool sound effect as well when he does it, so it's like shum 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 shum, and it's like really cool, like visually and audio, like everything is like amazing. But he wasn't very good. Like he was kind of okay, and in theory he's the strongest commander in the game, or he was back then, because you know he can hit like everything in theory. He just didn't do like that much damage to it. So the community was like, oh, you know, we want you to buff Ryota, and buff Ryota is like, there's like fan art of Ryota looking buff and all this other stuff. There's some great memes. And then they buffed him, and then they buffed him again. And this was before they even released the patch. So they were releasing like, here's what we're thinking of doing with the patch. Like, give us your thoughts on this. So they did that, and then they kept buffing him and buffing him and buffing him.
Oh no.
And he's like bringing a checkers piece and putting it on a chessboard and saying, like, yo, I'm just gonna like do this and kill all your army. Oh
man.
So now he does like extra damage each time he jumps, and that scales infinitely. So you can like one shot like anything in the game, strongholds, enemy commanders, like if you have the setup for it.
Oh my gosh.
So, and like because he has like his groove went from medium charge to fast charge, so he gets it really quick, and he gets it back really quick as well. So he's just so ridiculously overpowered. Like he changes the game when you put him in. So we're like, we have to ban Ryota. Like it felt so bad to do. And it's funny, like we made like a competitive mod for the game, so like us rebalancing a bunch of stuff. We took Ryota where he like increases damage each time he does a jump over like a group of units, to he does less damage per jump, and he's still top tier. Like he's still really good even with that.
Yeah. He's just mechanically too good.
Yeah. And then like below that you've got like Caesar, and Caesar's ability is that all the units around Caesar can like go again. So if you played like Fire Emblem, it's like the Bard from that, except you can do like 4 units. So like you would see people like move siege weaponry up, and then like use Inspire from Caesar on 4 of those, and they would immediately just fire and obliterate like someone's army.
Oh man. But
I see.
yeah, I that makes me think though, because I wanted to ask about this too, was that so there is a lot of kind of modding components, or like creating components in the game. Like you can make your own cutscenes and campaigns and stuff, but I was wondering like if the community had done attempts to balancing this now, and you said that there was like mods. Is that separate from like actually making stuff in the game? Did they like hack the game or something?
There is like official mod support for the game through Steam, so you can only do it on PC. Which is unfortunate because we have a lot of people who are on console. Switch is our second biggest player base, so we run into this issue of and there's been some arguments with the Chucklefish in the past in regards to this RNG damage in the game. So like you can do plus or minus 5 damage on any interaction. Well, there's like I can go way more in detail on that. That's like the simple version.
Yeah.
I guess like if you play like Hearthstone, for example, it's kind of like if every card did like +1 or -1 damage. I had a chance to. So we were very frustrated by that, or a lot of people are. And the conversation we had with Chucklefish about it was they were very adamant that stayed in the game, and they said if we wanted to do it, we would have to mod it ourselves. And it was just like that's probably like the most standoffish we've ever been with the developer, which is rather unfortunate. But like, I mean, we were also being a bit toxic about it too, so I can't really complain too much. But I mean, the reality is that we have RNG in the game. So the basic point with that story is that if we wanted to have no RNG, we had to mod that, and that would split the player base. So we're very wary of the fact that we can't do anything like that. Like when we did the mod, it was more just for like research in case they made a sequel or something. So we could be like, yo, we tried some stuff. This is like,
oh, okay.
And also it's kind of just a fun thing, but
yeah, I like this is really interesting because obviously, I mean, you're summarizing this now, and there's probably been like a lot of heated discussions from people that are like passionate about this in the game. But I feel like in the summary of like what actually came out of those events, it feels like the community is pretty level-headed when it comes to these things. Like keeping in mind those like, you know, splitting the community off, and like they want to be able to grow it as much as possible. Those are not the things like a lot of other communities will think about in certain ways. They'll be like, no, this is the optimal way to play the game, so we'll just like cut off the rest of the people and then we'll just go our own way. That has happened like in a lot of games, I feel. And so this is interesting to hear that like it kind of went back on it, but then I guess and also one of the, I guess, meeting halfway kind of things is to ban the commanders then, because if you I guess one of the ways would be to like mod the commanders to balance them, but then you wouldn't be able to play with the console people. So it's like, okay, let's just not play them. It's a bit unfortunate, but I can see the thought process of like going into that direction. And I guess now, because I guess that's worth mentioning too, because the game has been updated up until a certain point, but now it has had its like final update, which was August last year, I think, in 2020, right?
Something like that, yeah. And that was just a small balance patch, actually. Oh, actually, no, there was a bunch of bug fixes. So that's me. Talking from a competitive player, it was a small balance patch, but they did a bunch of bug fixing. That was also when PlayStation got their version of 2.0, because they were stuck on like the older version of the game for quite a while.
Okay.
And you know, there wasn't crossplay at that point. They came way later, so like Sony were dragging their feet a bit, to my understanding.
I see. I guess that's how you kind of made do with that situation, and because of the game not being updated anymore to this point. But also wanted to note that it's really cool to hear those things, like we're modding the game to research it for a potential sequel. It's like, man, I wish I could do that with like the games I've played at. You can't, like the possibilities to do that is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and also, you know, it was for me, like, I was interested in game dev, so I got to like basically try and like balance a competitive game to some degree, which was a lot of fun. I got into arguments with people about rebalancing stuff. People don't like that Rio's damage goes down in the mods. But even though he's like still top tier and like it's really balanced, people are like, I can't calculate my lethals anymore. Like I can't. It's just like, it's not about that. It's just about. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's completely fine. I on that note of, I guess, showing the passion for the game, is that I was wondering, because we had been watching a few of the matches, and to me, the initial feeling is that this is a very like relaxed in comparison to other esports like game that you can. I get the feeling of like watching a chess stream where it's like calmly explaining kind of what they're doing as it's going on, like as it's happening. But is there some points where it's like can get I guess like chaotic and like things can get out of control? I guess that would be like the super late game, perhaps, or
late game is like the main time it feels like that, because like we run chess timers. which there have been varying opinions as to whether that's a good idea or not. I actually prefer turn timers myself, but chess timers, each player has a set amount of time to play out the whole match. So
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Okay.
nowadays it's like 40. It's either 45 minutes or 60 minutes. It used to be 30 at one point. I was actually that was one of the other things that last balance patch did, is they added a 45-minute chess timer. So we were stuck with the option of 30 and 60 minutes, and it's like, one of these is like really quite long, and the other one's like you have to play really quick, but the maps are much smaller at that point too, so we were like kind of okay with it. But when you are on the clock and you've got 10 minutes left to work with and the game isn't coming to a conclusion yet, it's like, I can't think anymore, I just have to play. And I had a game, we have like a ranked ladder system as well. I played a match in there, I had 2 seconds left on the clock when I ended the game, and that was like a 1 hour chess timer too, so I used every second of that 1 hour to play at that game.
I would love to see those things, but I also, would that also make for situations where it's like maybe they don't have enough time to like properly execute a strategy, like they've put themselves in a position where it's like they need 5 more minutes to turn this thing around, but they only have 3 minutes left, so they're like against the time to like make this work. Is that a common scenario that could happen in these matches then?
Not as much anymore. It does happen. So like we don't like timeouts. Like that's generally it's like not really a good thing. Like the timers exist to force people to play, because we had a 6-hour final once, like never again. And actually, like even after that, like we ran before they put timers in the game. That's actually something like we really pushed with Chucklefish, and I'm really grateful that they did, is they put timers in for us. And they did that like really like on a very short turnaround as well. Like we're very grateful about that. So they put timers in for us, and like we used to have like refs running the clock for the players, and like it would be like, it's 5 minutes per turn, and we'd have to like message players saying you've got 1 minute left for this turn, yada yada, like please don't take longer than that. I had to DQ someone once because we gave them a match loss because they went over time twice. So it was like, if you go over the 5 minutes, we'll like message you with like, don't move another unit, just end your turn. And someone missed that twice. They hadn't read the rules, so I had to like give them a match loss. Yeah, I hate stuff like that. So when you look at timeouts, like it's something we don't really want to happen. The timers exist to like allow the tournament to function, because we're actually up to about 60 minutes now for a lot of maps. Obviously like smaller maps are on 45, but like we don't, like it has, like there's like a kind of realistic thing of like we can't expect people to spend more than 2 hours playing a game. Like it isn't really fair to like people who are entering, because like casual players will want to come in and be like, I just want to sit and play for like an hour or something.
Yeah.
And that's like a long time for a game. But actually, like if you play like a game of Dota or something, you're expected to spend like 30-40 minutes, or Counter-Strike you're spending like an hour per match or something. So it isn't that out of like the region of time for people. But when you get up to like 2 hours and beyond, it's like, now you're really like demanding a lot.
That's a commitment.
It is a really big commitment. Yeah, you're right. So we don't want to like put people in that situation where like they have to sit and potentially sit for 6 hours. So I'm trying to think of the point I was trying to make here. Sorry. It is early in the morning.
For anyone who's tuning in, we're like doing this in early morning in EU and like late night NA for Dave here. So, but yeah, it's.
Oh wait, no, sorry. I actually remember now. All right, so like timeouts, we don't want them to have to happen. So when they do happen, it's normally like a bit disappointing, and like you were saying, it does limit strategy to a degree, and it limits comeback potential. So we've had matches which have been really close to the wire, and it's been great, and there's a lot of back and forth, and then both players are running low on time, and neither of them can finish the game. And like there was a match once, and like this was before we put a rule in against it, where both players were just smashing the end turn button, because the timer doesn't go down if you do that fast enough.
So that's what you mean by chess timer.
Yeah.
I see.
So if someone has 9 seconds left on the clock, and they're like, oh no, it was even less than that. I think they went down to like 3 or 4 seconds, and they're just mashing end turn, because like the moment they take more than a second on a turn, or actually 0 seconds on a turn, like the timer's gonna slowly trickle down, and like both players were just sitting there pressing the end turn button.
But so what's the win condition then? Because like you said that it's the commander's death, and then like the base. What is it?
Oh, so if you time out, you lose.
Strongholds.
That is another lose condition.
Oh, so that's how it works now.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just get the image of like, because you have the image of like chess tournaments where they have the clock next to you, and I just see them like mashing the hell out of that clock.
that is actually what would be happening. Is like it would just be two players like slamming their clock timer like in like a rhythm against each other.
But so how did it end? Like, did it just
so the other person actually realized that because the other, like, you know, the person who has only a couple seconds left on the clock can't do anything, and they had like 30 seconds left on their clock, so they just like they built like 2 dragons and like chomped through their opponent's army and killed the commander, because they had just enough time to do that. So
that's some clutch gaming.
It was. I mean, but looking back, we're like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. So we have rules now that say if you don't do anything on your turn twice, like 2 turns in a row, you just forfeit. So that's like not an in-game rule, but like a tournament rule. And we actually had someone lose a tournament match last event because they didn't read that rule. And I actually went and checked the event page. It's actually a really big section on the page of like, this is like a thing. Here are all like because there's like a list of like things that we count as an action in a turn, so it's like that section is actually quite large, because of like it explains everything in detail, so there's no reason someone should miss that.
But in general, it feels like the community has kind of gravitated to promoting more aggressive play and like trying to kind of, in your own way, try to optimize the game time, so it doesn't feel like, you know, people are spending their entire day on like one match, which is commendable, but I guess it's really difficult to, because at some points it's going into the modding territory, as you have mentioned. Like you can't, like these ending turns stuff. It's like, but it's really cool to see or hear about, because I think this makes it must make it really like beneficial for the developers if they ever do a sequel to this game, like seeing that like, okay, these things obviously doesn't work in a competitive setting because the community that we're working with actually is going into these things. But I wanted to just ask one more thing before we go into like the community stuff, and it almost kind of works as a segment to this, but we mentioned a few plays here and there, but I'm kind of curious to hear of like, are there any, I guess, plays that have kind of defined the meta, or like maybe even players that play in a very unique way that could be a good way to kind of describe how a match would function? Because I mean, from the games that we have mentioned so far, just like Smash or StarCraft, there's like players that do really wacky things that it sticks with you in like for a long time, because it's someone kind of found out a new mechanic or something similar like that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a community member called Sneaky Dragon, and he's like the biggest Wargroove YouTuber. He's also like a really good player as well. He in the past like 2 main events, he's come top 4 twice. So he's like, you know, he's good at the game. He knows his stuff. And he likes to describe it as like there's mechanics players and then there's assassin players. And like mechanics players are all about like having very good strategy. Like they have very good like economy management. They like go into a map and they know what they're kind of doing. And then assassin players are like probably a bit scrappier, like they make kind of messier situations. They like probably fall behind a lot, like in general, but they'll have really good ways of getting like lethals and like sneaking out wins. So like those are the 2 like main play styles you'll see of like someone who's when you talk about StarCraft, like mechanics player is like someone who has like very good like APM and like good base management and that kind of thing. So it's like slightly different in terms of like Wargroove, but those are like the 2 terms that we like tend to use or are being used these days. So yeah, you do get like the mechanics players and the assassin players. I'm kind of like a mix of both. and I'm probably just not like the best mechanics player, so I like rely a bit on like pulling out wins out of nowhere. But yeah, I mean, like it does lead to a lot of fun situations where there's players who are extremely good at like finding good kill options, and like there are that chess grandmaster player I mentioned earlier. He has like his famous thing is that he'll take ages on each turn. He was one of like the original people that we had to put timers in for. He'd just take way too long. He's the kind of guy that will spend 30 minutes like on a turn. He'll just sit there and look at things for 30 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And he'll plan out several turns ahead.
Okay.
So but the cool thing about that is he'll win like some matches doing that, because like he'll like execute his plan afterwards, and then he'll just go through and it'll like work out. So there's like these interesting personalities, and there's other players who like Shu, who's the 3 times world champion now. God, he's like won every major since like the actual main balance update that they did with Double Trouble, the 2.0 version, and he is fast and consistent, and like he's probably not like the best player, like he doesn't peak the highest, but he's so consistent and he's so quick that it puts a lot of pressure on the opponent to like not screw up against them, because he'll always be ahead on timer. So that's like a pressure
have
there.
those two faced like the Irish guy that you talked about and then Shu? Like have they, because it seems like they're on the opposite ends of like really fast player and then the really slow player.
So Ash, the Irish player, I don't know if they've competed in a while. So Shu has been around for quite a long time, but they only really like came like really up and stayed at the top for that's like a kind of more recent thing compared to Ash. Ash was like good at the start and then fell off after that. So they were like first, and then they were top 4, and then they were top 8, and then I don't think they've made top 8 since then. Okay. Whereas Shu was like, I think they like existed in the first couple of events but didn't do that well, and they were 3rd in Group of War 3, and then they were 1st, and then they were 1st, and then they were 1st.
So, domination.
Yeah. I mean, Shu has this other factor as well of that people are just genuinely scared to fight him. So he has a lot of DQ wins because people will see that they have to face him in God. Bracket, and they'll just be like, I don't want to play. Like, I don't want to lose the Shu.
Oh my gosh.
Like demoralized.
Oh yeah. I mean, like so I was actually ill that week, so I'm one of those people who like has a DQ loss against Shu, which is funny because I actually have like an okay win rate against like the guy. Like I'm on the losing end of that, but I'm like better than most people. So, but
that's really cool to hear though. Like I can definitely sense that there is some personalities that you can add to like your gameplay and playstyle, even though that there are like more the mechanical and assassins. It sounds like there's a lot of room to kind of maneuver your own personality within that. But speaking of like players and stuff, I wanted to kind of get into the community section of this part of the episode. And I mean, we've already kind of gone into like how you got into the community, but so more or less wondering like for others who like want to get into this community, how would you recommend them to do that? Because I can feel also with the games that we focused on previously in Nichesports, it could be more of like a mechanics. Like I don't feel like I'm good enough, like I'm not fast enough, I can't get into Valorant. But with this, I almost feel like it's the brain aspect. It's like for me even like getting into this, I'm like I don't even know where I'm supposed to start thinking about the game. So like it could be very, I think, scary for people to get into like a very strategic game like this. So how would you recommend people to get into Wargroove? Yeah,
and like I mean, especially now because like, oh look, I mean you say that, but chess is like at the biggest it's ever been.
That's true though.
And like there's a lot of similarities in how you get into the game, because chess is a lot about knowing your openings and like knowing like how to like play like the game. So there's a lot of like knowledge and research you have to do to be like good at chess. And Wargroove, that's true to an extent as well, where like you have to understand how all the units work, because when the 2.0 update came out and Ash hadn't played the game, we got him to do a show match. They like literally didn't know certain unit interactions and lost because of that. and like that was that level of like not preparing at all. They just like liked playing like in the moment. So don't do that. You should absolutely learn how like all the units work and what their interactions are. And even I don't know all of them, so like there'll be times when like a unit will survive like a certain thing. So like a knight will crit a wagon or something, and I'm like, wait, that actually survives that? Because wagons are amazingly durable, and they're great wall units. But I'll be surprised because I'll be like, I did not expect that to live. Like, so even I don't know everything, but like knowing like what the basic matchups are. So like knights beat like infantry and dogs and like all this other stuff, but they lose to spears, and spears lose to like archers and so on, and like knights are good against archers, like that, like certain like triangles and stuff. Yeah,
like in those mechanics is stuff that you kind of learn in the campaign, right? So I guess that would be the first like point of entry, is that like actually play the campaign.
Yeah, so like I recommend people play the first 6 missions of the campaign, at least in terms of like having a good time, because even Chucklefish have said the campaign like falls off after a certain point. And it was also it was designed for the original game balance, and then they had to like go back and kind of fix some stuff for the update. So
that's interesting.
It's not super great in that sense as well, because like it was designed for a different balance and they didn't really know as much what they were doing. So there's a co-op campaign which you can play single player as well. You just play both players, and that is actually like a much better single player experience, or like I guess you would say like player versus AI experience.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for the main campaign, I would recommend you play like the first 6 missions. You could play a little bit more than that. And actually, like the ending's really good. It's really annoying. There's just this kind of bit towards like the end of the game where it gets really boring, from my perspective. And like, I mean, a lot of other people feel the same way. It just like those levels drag really badly. It takes like an hour or something to beat some of them, and it's like, oh, this is
I see.
Feels kind of slow. So yeah, you play the campaign, and then from there, I would say once you like know how the basics of the game work, there's some other fun custom campaigns that are like worth checking out as well. But go into the competitive Discord, or not even the competitive Discord anymore, just like the main Wargroove Discord. And we are a Discord community, so like they get like a lot of fighting games where like you just kind of have to like go into that community and be like, yo, I'm new, like I want to like learn. There are some guides, so like Sneaky Dragon has like a bunch of videos on YouTube. He kind of explains stuff. There's some other people as well who have done similar things, so like you can kind of learn by like watching some YouTube videos. And I would say from there, just like play people. There's like, we have a newcomers channel, like competitive newcomers. So people there will answer questions, yeah. And there's other new players in there who will play games. And like there's matchmaking channels. We have a ranked system that people can register for. So
I have to say though too, like, because I streamed the game a bit now to try to kind of learn more about it before this cast, and I was so positively surprised to, like, as soon as I started streaming, because I just posted in the Discord like, hey, I'm gonna stream, I'm new. I don't know anything, but you just be nice. And then as soon as I started streaming, I had a few people in the chat that was just like, hello, like, welcome to the game. And then after a while, even the community manager from the company was like, hey, like, how's it going with the game? And it felt really like positive, even though I was obviously making some crude mistakes in like even the beginning missions. I was like, what? This is not supposed to be this hard, I think. It was really nice to kind of see and like people coming in and just being helpful in that way. So I definitely can see that having like a newcomers chat like that is a positive thing for people to get into the game.
You just reminded me of other thing. There's a puzzle mode. Like doing the puzzles is really good. Like that gives you like a really good understanding of like how to like.
I didn't even know this part. Like, is that like?
Yeah, they're just a bunch of like win this in one turn kind of thing.
So okay, like challenges, kind of.
Yeah. So
those are always good.
Yeah. That actually like helps quite a lot because it helps you like identify. Oh, I can like win in this situation, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's something I missed out on when I played.
Do your drills.
Yep. One question I wanted to bring up too, because as a community, a strategy game has a few more openings or like possibilities that other games don't have. So like in any shooter game, you can't play from the other side of the world because of latency. But in a strategy game like this, I feel like the community must be global, right? Or is there any specific region that is like most or the majority of the player comes from this specific country? Or is it very, you know, everyone's from everywhere kind of thing?
So I would say the biggest community is America, which is, you know, pretty common across like most esports. I guess like China is bigger for some, but we're definitely like America is the biggest, and then we're very global after that point actually. And it actually is, since there was one event where we did like America brackets for however many North Americans had signed up, and like a Europe bracket for like everybody else, and then since then it's actually spread out more and more, so like we're more and more global now. We actually have an event coming up that's based on like countries or like continents in some cases, where people can sign up for like their team, and there's like a whole bunch of different countries entering now, which is like really cool. So
it sounds almost like crew battles or something like that, where you
it's like it's based off of an event called Nation Wars, which is like a StarCraft 2 big event. And you know, I looked at that and I was like, you know, we should do one of these, and we did last year.
So sick.
And like the French team, they have a great community. Like I love hearing about the French. They have their own Discord now. They got Team France, and like they have their own like memes and like culture and stuff for that. One of my main co-commentators for the game, and who runs the Grivel War YouTube channel, he does like all the video management and tags and all of that stuff. He's the like one of the team leaders for Team France, and he'll tell me stuff about like how great it is for them to be able to talk about the game in French with other people. So like there's a lot of cool stuff like that.
That's really nice.
Yeah, so we have like this international community for the game. I think we're one team member short right now for Team UK, so I need to find someone to fill that role. But or we allow countries to work with other countries as well. So there's the Asia, Australia, Africa, Hungary team, because
whoa.
Okay, so, like I thought you were listing different teams, regions. And then it's like, oh, it's one team.
It's a team made of all of these.
The team acronym is AHA, which is like perfect, and they had like really good fun with that. And it's like, okay, why would Hungary be in this like triple continent like team? But it works. So you know, we're a bit chill and flexible with like how people set that stuff up. But you know, like we're not gonna allow like an America team and then an America plus Canada team. So we're like, no, there's like an America team, or there could be two America teams and a Canada team. So if like a team exists already, but like, yeah, we're just like flexible about that kind of thing.
I wanted to get to a question actually that was, so the I think his name was Ash, or the nickname was Ash, the Irish player. Yeah. So he mentioned that the game, like he didn't like chess anymore because he felt like that was figured out. And then now last year, Wargroove had its, I guess, quote unquote, final update, or like for at least as far as we know, and it's been quite some time, at least a year. In esports years, it's kind of a long time. In chess, it's like nothing. But I was just wondering, like, do you feel like the game has come to a point where it's starting to get figured out too, or is it just still like people are kind of shifting the metas depending on, you know, matchups and like figuring new things out?
So we're still actually figuring stuff out. I mean, obviously it's a lot more solved now than what it was before, but there's still shifts that we see. So there was a map called Open Season that was played for a long time, and like the thing about that map is there's one rifle on each side, because the rifleman's like ridiculously overpowered, and like we ban it from like the production place when we put that on a map. So it's like kind of a novelty to see a rifle on a map. I mean, there are some maps that allow rifles, but whatever. They're rare. But anyway, the point is there's only one of these. So people, it's like stuck behind a gate, so you have to break the gate down and then get the rifle out, and then it's like this whole headache. And for a long time, that was how people played the map. And then Shu of all people, and he did it in like a semi-final or a final, ignored the rifle, just said, screw it, I'm just going to build knights and attack my opponent. And absolutely stomped the person they were playing against by doing so. So we were like, oh, I guess that's a play, and it worked. So and he just completely ignored the rifle. He didn't even break the gate down. Like the rifle just kind of sat there. There were turns when the rifle wasn't even doing anything. Like you could shoot the gate itself, and it didn't. So he just ignored this unit for most of the game, and it was so funny because we were like, wait, you can do that? Because everybody had this pre-notion of like, you got to break the gate down because the rifle's such a good unit. And like she was like, nah, I'm just gonna like, because knights are also really strong as rifles as well, and they're a really good early rushdown unit. And the thing is, like, the rifle's kind of expensive, and you start it with it's injured, so you have to heal off a building which costs gold. So you're dedicating like a lot of resources to getting this thing out. People considered it worth it, and then all of a sudden, like one person just ignores it and just charges at their opponent and zogs them down, basically. Yeah, like it just changed how people approach that map, and like people started like really using knights a lot more around this time too. So there's been definitely phases of like people like being like, oh, you know, like maybe like playing more defensive and more like, I guess you would say like building line formations and stuff isn't the play. Like I'm just gonna make lots of knights and attack everywhere. And that's actually like really popular right now. So that's been like a shift away from like what we had before, because like the original game it was just like spear meta, like people would just make spears, and then they made them way more expensive in the first like the big balance update that they did with 2.0, and that really changed how the game played. But people still liked spears, and they were stuck in this mindset of like, I'm gonna get my infantry army up, I'm gonna get my spear army up, and then like kind of push my opponent. And now it's like people are just building knights and just charging everywhere, and it's actually really fun because knights are a really high skill unit because they have a crit condition. And there's a thing in Wargroove, I didn't mention this before, every unit except for commanders has a crit condition. And it gives them bonus damage when they like achieve that. And the knight is you have to move 6 tiles away from where you start. So
I learned this on stream. I remember this.
Yeah, and like it's a bit confusing because a lot of people see, oh, you have to move 6 tiles, so they'll do like a kind of U-turn or something with the knight, and no, that doesn't work. Like you have to go in like a direction essentially away from where you start, and that makes them really high skill because you want to crit with knights. So like knight positioning is like really like finicky, and like you have to do a lot of like thinking, and there'll be stuff like, funnily, like if you build a knight and then another knight after it, because you move the first knight to its max distance, the second knight covers that with a crit. So if your opponent attacks it, then you can crit. And if you keep doing that and building more and more knights, then they all crit like and defend each other with crits. So they're actually kind of like, if you make one, well, you gotta make like 3 or 4 more because they actually work really well together.
I see. So it's like snowballs in that direction. But that's cool to hear too, that that the game is still evolving in that sense.
Yeah, and we also have the StarCraft thing of like, we balance with maps. So like that's kind of what we do. So as we update the map pool and make changes and stuff, like that also redefines what the meta is.
That makes sense.
That's great, and also a good way to kind of keep the longevity of the game, to like, okay, now we feel like we're stuck in this kind of sort of meta. Okay, let's make new maps, and then people just go ham on like designing them. That's I really like that.
Yeah, especially since you have all the tools to do it too. I don't, is the current state of Wargroove, is it more concentrated on, because I'm just referencing a couple of the videos I saw. Like I watched one of the VODs of your streams from, I think just like yesterday or the other day, but also like I went on YouTube and searched up like Wargroove gameplay. And the difference I saw was that like maybe 2 years ago, maps seemed a lot smaller, like army sizes were a lot smaller. But is the trend now that like people have like, you know, 10, 20 plus units on the field at a time for competitive play? Is that how it goes now?
Yeah, so we did see a shift towards, because there's a thing about when you have like small amounts of production and a small map size, that people can solve that fairly quickly.
Right.
So those become kind of stale because people like have like the term scienced it, where like they've done all of like the opening possibilities, and We've definitely had maps in the past where like people are like, you cannot win on player 2 side on this map anymore because like it's just been solved. So smaller maps with like limited production have that issue more quickly. So it's very rare for a map to have 1 barracks on it per side anymore because like people will just figure that out. It's still like those do occasionally pop up and like they do okay for a while, but when you get to like more production and bigger maps, then the variety of play options is much greater. So
Yeah.
it like gives people more room to like figure things out. So we're finding like a balance because we don't want every map to be the same large map. So we want like kind of medium-sized ones. If like a small map can work, then like, you know, we'll go for it. But those generally only these days see 1 or 2 events anymore. And actually our events, like because our calendar schedule is like a 6-month period now, it's been that for a little while. Like a map won't really last, like a small map won't last longer than that 6 months.
I see.
From my
So it's like a
perspective.
season almost.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of get to also because you know we mentioned Groove War a lot, but is there any other kind of, I guess, content creators or streamers of the game that you would recommend people to kind of tune into to get to know the game a bit more? Or
it's a bit of an older game now, so I mean we're coming up to what, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of games like they don't really see a community last that long. Like
no, that is different.
There aren't really too many streamers for the game, and you know, like unfortunately, like we've had to, you know, ban some people from the community over time, which is never really a fun thing. But so like we're kind of like limited in like who is like available. So the main person I would recommend is Sneaky Dragon. They're just like a really lovely person in general. They're very like good player as well, but they do like a lot of like mixture of like casual stuff and they do a mixture of like competitive. So
Okay.
that's the main YouTuber, and they're like the most active, I think, for Wargroove.
Yeah.
I think as far as anyone else, like everybody, like most other people have just kind of moved on. So like there are some people in the community that make stuff, but it's not that regular.
But then I guess also just checking out Groove of War to kind of get those tournament VODs and like seeing actually how the competitive scene functions, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we have like the Groove of War channel now, which is been running for quite a while. It's definitely changed a bit over the years. So now we only post like commentated stuff. Yeah, right now it's mostly me, and like, but we're releasing like commentated stuff for like on a consistent or fairly consistent basis. So like managing like keeping that channel like active every week is like been a bit of a challenge over the years. But
yeah, but it's also detrimental to kind of keep the community alive. So it's really nice to hear that you are continuing with that to maintain this, because it is a challenge when the game stops getting updated like this. I wanted to, before we go into the last or final section of the episode, I just wanted to kind of hear from you what the I guess the ideal or like the dream scenario is for like continuing for this game, because one of the things that I've heard mentions of is that like the dream of having a sequel to Wargroove. But is that something that you kind of think about too, or is there like more future patches or something like that, or a re-release on a new console?
They hinted at it, like there was a 2-year anniversary recently this year. We worked with them. We did actually that's a really cool example of us working with the company. Is we did like this big anniversary stream. So like the Chucklefish streamed and they raided someone else, and then that person streamed and then they raided someone else, and then
that's nice.
We did like this big community thing, and I finished it off. I did a bunch of show matches at the end, and it was really fun. But one of the things they mentioned in the anniversary blog posts they did in the anniversary stream is that, you know, there's this talk about something is coming. So we don't know if it's a sequel, we don't know if it's an update, but something is coming. So we're in this position right now of, you know, we've been in this position before when they hinted that there was a big update coming to the game, and that was the 2.0 update, of we need to prepare for whatever this is. So right now, as far as we're concerned, it's like we know there's something coming, and I trust Chucklefish to deliver on like something is gonna come. So like they don't say stuff unless they're actually gonna do it, kind of thing. I know them well enough for that. And you know, I've worked with other companies before in the past, and Chucklefish is definitely a company who, when they say they want to do something, like okay, like we can take them at their word on that.
Yeah.
So we're in this position of we have to get all the structure around the game figured out. So we need to know what our season structure is like. We need to know what our rule set is like. We need to know who like the streamers are and like what kind of formats we want to play and that kind of stuff. And that's all stuff we can do without knowing anything about the sequel. Because like it's probably going to play relatively similarly. I don't think they're going to go like super out there. We're not going to be expected to like, oh, they're not going to turn around and be like, oh, you know, we're expecting game lengths to be 3 to 4 hours. Like, I don't think they're going to like pull that on us. So we're just kind of like figuring out how we're going to like execute on whatever comes out next. So
that's cool. So like you're kind of gearing up for whatever is coming so that you can like maximize, I guess, the output, and that when things actually happen, it will be as visible as possible.
Yeah, because for us, like, we're actually in the best state we've ever been for someone new to come in, and like learn about the game, and like there's like streams and there's like YouTube content and stuff, and there's like all these events going on. So now is a really good time to get into the game, but we're also 2.5 years after launch. So like this is like the lowest point for people who are discovering the game, I think, like where like we're not going to get this many new people. We still get new people in, and we still get older people coming back and having a good time. And, you know, stuff like Groove of Nations is really fun because like people are like, well, you know, I'm not a very good player, but I want to go and have fun with the people from my country. But for us, it's like we don't want to go into like the next game and have a 6-hour stalemate final again. So like, we want like everything to be like not perfect, but as like good as possible, because that's, if there's going to be a big influx of new players, that's when it's going to happen, like a big update or a sequel or something. So we're like, this time we're going to get it right. Like we're going to have thousands of people watching, and we're going to want them to come back, or maybe not all of them, but like we want like more of them to come back, because, you know, I had 49 peak viewership on Groove of War 2 finals when I did that, and the Groove of War 1 finals had thousands. And it's like that finals was like, the Groove of War 1 finals was really bad, and the Groove of War 2 finals was not great. There was server issues at the time. Chucklefish was at GDC, like all of them. So
my gosh,
like, you know, the game would freeze when someone conceded, which was not the best, but it was like a bit awkward on the broad. Like if you go back and watch those VODs, it's like, oh well, you know, the game's not responding anymore, so I guess the match is over. And then we get a message from like the players and be like, yeah, such and such players conceded. But you know, like it progressively got a lot better in terms of viewership, like quality and all that stuff. So advertising for us, it's been like, I've actually spent like some money out of pocket, like doing some show matches with like big names from other communities and like things like that. We're lucky to be working with there's a guy from the StarCraft community called Fear Dragon. He puts $1,000 in every 6 months now for like the prize pool for our event. Yeah, he's like really been like, and not just like financially, but he's also been like a great, I would say like almost a mentor figure. He's been around to give us advice and stuff as well, whenever we needed it. So he's been great to work with. So we're just like, we got to get this right the next time, because like we could potentially have a lot of people watching the finals for the first Groove of War after like the whatever Wargroove is, they've called it. Yeah. So we
Wargroove.
We don't want to make the same mistake twice. We want to have like people come in and like enjoy themselves and have a good time, and we want them to stick around, because I mean from a selfish perspective, having thousands of people watching my stream would be great. That would be amazing.
Right.
So like, yeah, like that'd be a really nice thing to have.
But also for the sake of the community, right? Because like, maintaining momentum post launch is always a huge undertaking for any game studio. So I totally understand you.
Yeah, and it just sounds interesting, and I hope wish the community the best that it has this, because I like we should play together. This is like the one game we can actually play together, because the show match,
because no latency isn't an issue, right? So
exactly. And you can also, it does have like because we've been talking about timers and stuff. Like we do, and we run events for it in this format, but like it has asynchronous play. So like you can essentially like all the information's on the server, so you can go in, you can take your turn, end turn. Other opponent can take their turn whenever they like. So
We're gonna have
we could have a
month-
week-long
Yeah.
match together.
yeah, like they is an event that we still run. It's not as big a focus anymore, but like basically everybody is given like a set of games for that month. And like I would wake up every morning, have my breakfast, like load up Wargroove, and I'd have like 10 matches open, and I'd just go through all my turns, and that would be
dang.
like that would be my morning for that. Like, but I'd do that for like a couple of weeks or something, and then like, I'd
That's
like win or lose some of them. But
yeah,
Super interesting.
That's so different to anything like any other competitive game that I've heard. But speaking of, like, this is one of the questions that we usually put at the end of the cast, which is interesting too. Like, there's two of them. So one of them is, are there like any misconceptions about the game that you would like to straighten out? I mean, I guess you mentioned this like long final now, but if there's anything that you kind of feel that people that first look at Wargroove, they kind of misunderstand, that you think that they shouldn't.
I would say that like it's just a fun game to play casually, even, and like people can play it however they want. Like I've watched friends of mine who I didn't even know were interested into it, and they were playing with like a group of them, and like they were just like having a good time playing some like random ass map, and like they were playing like a 3-player free for all or something. So I definitely think like, we've been here talking about the competitive side, but like the casual side, like there's a bunch of fun stuff you can do with it, and
like that's really good to know too. Like it's and as I've kind of ranted on about in this episode too, is that like the story, I really like the story mode. Like it was really cozy to play through too, so I recommend checking that out too. I guess the final question here is what makes the game special from other kind of competitive games and communities, would you say, in this regard? I mean, we have talked on lengths about the similarities to like StarCraft and chess, but anything that like exemplifies Wargroove that, in your opinion, different to other communities?
I mean, I guess like the one thing I would say, and this is something I've heard from like pretty much like almost all of the people who play competitive at a high level, is that it has, if you're someone who's like, I would be really good at StarCraft if it didn't have like such a high APM requirement, a lot of the top players for Wargroove are in that same mindset, and Wargroove is like great at fulfilling that. And I guess like maybe Wargroove isn't quite the game for you. Like maybe you'll play it and you're like, this isn't really my thing. But if you're someone who has had that thought of, I would be good at StarCraft if I didn't need 300 APM, then Wargroove might be like something worth like checking out for you, because that is something I think the game does very well. Is it has that strategy element. Like my tag is Barrett RTS, and I was getting ripped on recently for this because I mostly play turn-based stuff, but it is very, very good for like people who want to play something strategic, that maybe like, because I know chess is very popular at the moment as well, but chess is like a very largely solved game. Maybe not completely solved, but like if you don't want to spend like a year just reading chess literature to be good at that game, and you're looking for something that is on that kind of same like area of like game design or game space as far as like strategy games goes, like Wargroove is actually maybe like kind of your jam. Like maybe you'd be interested in it. So yeah, we definitely like, I think we fill that role quite well.
Cool. Well, all right, thank you. The last thing we do is we ask if you have any shout outs to make. We've talked about Groove War, but maybe you want to shout anyone else out, you can go ahead.
Definitely a few big shout outs to give. I mean, of course, like Fear Dragon, as always, like been like a really great like a help to our community. Has like put up the prize pool for the last few events. He's putting up the prize pool for the next event. And as far as I'm aware, like he has no plans to stop supporting us. Like he's been like a really great like mentor in some ways, a really great like supporter of our community. So a big shout out to him. I actually want to give a shout out to person called Zombie Grub. She does a podcast. She's StarCraft commentator, does a whole bunch of stuff. I really enjoy her stream. I watch it like multiple times a week, but she does a podcast as well, which I think is about to go on hiatus for a couple months, but it's called Caster Calls, and it's about commentary and esports commentary. And that's been a really great resource for learning how to do my job better. So like I've made a big effort to like work on a bunch of habits. Or like I notice a lot of things, like they'll bring something up in one of those episodes and I'll be like, oh, that's a bad habit I should stop doing. Or, oh, that's actually a strong point for me. I should like focus and like try and hone in on that more. So if anybody out there is like interested in like doing esports commentary or just even hearing the background of like people's thoughts on it, that's been a really good resource for me. So yeah, that's another shout out. I guess like another thing as well is one thing we're doing, because we messed up when we did our 6 months season cycle, is that our finals are in like May, and it's a really bad time to run anything in esports because it's exam finals for a lot of people. So we're gonna have like a 3-month stopgap event in January through March next year, and that's gonna be like a few different games. So we have like 2 we're planning on doing is like Wargroove and Advance Wars. Like I confirmed that now. Because, you know, there's the Advance Wars remake coming out, and that's been like a whole other exciting thing that we're going to have to like deal with. Like, you know, oh my god, we're going to have console war-esque stuff going on, I imagine, between Wargroove and Advance Wars, even though most people play both games. But we're going to do like a multi-game event, and we're probably going to do some other events, and actually we're looking for other people who are interested in being involved in that. So like, because, you know, I come from a fighting game background. Like, I mean, the event you were at with me, we had 7 games. There was meant to be 10, but we cut 3 of them, I think. So I'm used to that background of being a whole bunch of different games under one roof. So I want to bring that to like strategy games, and that's not really been done before.
All right. Well, cool. And yeah, I guess this has been a very different episode. Like, I'm glad that we got the chance to do this, because the point of Nichesports is to kind of shine a light on different esports communities, and I definitely feel like we have found something special here. And not only will this community begin to evolve, but you even mentioned the Advance Wars coming back now too. So there's a lot of things happening in this this section of the esports world. So thank you so much, Barrett, for giving us the insights and telling us more about Wargroove.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Oh, one thing I will say about Advance Wars. So there's a community called Advance Wars by Web, and they have like a web browser version of Advance Wars. Their traffic since that announcement for Advance Wars Remake has been like through the roof. The website's struggling to run right now because of that. So in 3 months' time, or no, wait, I think it's November, December time. So a little bit like later this year when Advance Wars Remake comes out, there's going to be a community for that. Like, and it's not going to be just the Wargroove community. Like, we want to run stuff for it as well, but like that's going to be another game that's going to have like a big boom, I think, and like a big resurgence too. So that's going to be really exciting times. So it's a good time to be in this kind of space.
Well, great. I guess that makes the end for the episode. So thank you to both Dave and the other Dave, Barrett here, for coming on to this episode.
Yeah, thank you, Barrett.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
This was Nichesports Wargroove, featuring Barrett. Thank you for listening, and if you'd like to support us, you can follow us on Twitter or subscribe to us on YouTube at Fellows TV. We'd also like to hear from you, what you thought about the cast, and if you have any suggestions for a future episode, whether that is a niche competitive game or region. You can join our Discord, which is in our Twitter bio, and tell us what you think. We'll see you in the next episode, but until then, we hope you have a nice day.